Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre.
And I'm Vianora Vinca. From newspaper reporters to network anchors to internet bloggers, journalists from all over the world converged on Haiti to cover the recent earthquake. But does extensive coverage translate into even coverage?
On this edition of Independent Sources, some journalists weigh in on the way the media has reported on the crisis in Haiti.
We look at recent developments in diplomacy between the U.S. and China.
And we profile a publication on parenting aimed at communities of color.
We'll have those stories and news of the week after this.
Ethnic media is growing media, and the rest of the media is shrinking because it seems like ethnic media is the part of the media that's doing better and maybe is like the hope for the future.
In the days after the earthquake hit Haiti, newspapers and nightly newscasts were filled with stories on a devastated country. A month later, much of the media continues to report on the aftermath of the disaster. But does quantity equal quality? Joining me to offer an assessment of the media coverage is Nayaba Arinde of the Amsterdam News, Ricot Dupuy of Radio Soleil, a Haitian station based in Brooklyn, and Curtis Brainard of the Columbia Journalism Review. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Ricot, let's start with you. Give us a sense of January 12th. What was it like for you? How did you manage to inform the New York community about what had just gone down in Haiti?
Well, I had just taken my mom to a radiation center where she's undergoing treatment, and normally I stay with her for about two hours to make sure there's no bad reaction. But that day I couldn't do that because I received a call from the radio station. Mario said, "Ricot, please report to the station immediately. A major catastrophe. You know, Mario, Port-au-Prince is destroyed." I said, "What?"
You thought he was overhyping. He's always
as usual. You know him, right? He said, "Port-au-Prince is destroyed." I said, "What are you talking about, Mario?" He said, "Ricot, come to the radio station." So I don't know what. So I entrust my mom with a lady, and I rushed to the station. When I got there, I saw about 50 people in front of the station. I knew right there something significant had happened.
And what were these people doing? Why were they at the station?
They came with the station with pictures of daughters, of sons, of aunts, people who had just traveled to Haiti for vacation. They don't know where they are, and they're crying. They said, "What do we do? Please help me, Ricot." I know what to do. The phone system had failed. You can't even get through to Haiti. Marcus, the owner of Melody FM, a sister station, I mean, his wife perished in this thing. Yes. He was a nervous wreck. We didn't know what to do. So that's the situation we had to deal with.
And so, how do you comfort these people? How do you keep them informed? What do you tell them? What did you do?
Well, we try to tell them. We try to buy time by telling them, please, you don't know. Don't rush to conclusion. Don't exaggerate, because if they call Haiti, they could not get through very soon. Because at that time they don't know the system failed. They assume for whatever reason the worst had happened. So we had to calm them down. Basically, what we did, we offer a shoulder to lean on. A lot of times, all we have to tell them, I understand.
How long did that coverage last like that? At what point did you start providing news information to listeners?
Well, we were lucky that we were able to simulcast with Signal FM, which was the only radio station that was sturdy enough to be on during this whole thing. So we had no problem getting information. So we had moment-to-moment information with Signal FM. So all this was happening there. So they were getting information, and that made it worse because Signal was showing the brutality of the earthquake, the magnitude of the problem. So it was good to have the information, but the information was really bad information coming to them.
Okay, speaking of bad information, Nayaba, you recently wrote a piece in the Amsterdam News where you criticized the coverage of the mainstream press as you call it, the Tarzan effect. Can you explain to us what you mean by that?
Well, people were coming to us and calling the paper and saying to us, why is it always seeing is white doctors and white paramedics and white, firefighters out there? And we know there's a lot of black people who are out there trying to help, giving assistance. They flew out there, sometimes on their own dollar, sometimes with other people, to try and help and you're never seeing this. You're not seeing any Haitians in Haiti helping Haitians. It's just like, you know, this great white hope type thing, this Tarzan effect. And so that's why we wrote the article. We spoke to a lot of different people, and they were concerned about the coverage because of how it appears. You know, we want to have a balanced view so we can see ourselves helping ourselves, as we always have and always will, and be fair about it. Don't be biased. Don't be, you know, because it speaks to a different agenda. We want to be sure that your motivation, as Hazel Beckel says in the article, is pure. So that's why we wrote the piece, just, you know, just to get a balanced perspective.
And Curtis, in looking at the coverage, what did you think? Did you share her views?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was, I would agree, dominated by, you know, white emergency aid responders. I think there were some reasons for that. I think that Port-au-Prince was so thoroughly devastated that there was very little in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake that the government and local health responders could do to help themselves. But, you know, more than anything, I was, you know, disappointed by how long it took to get really kind of accurate and reliable information out there at all, regardless of, you know, who was providing that information and who was shown in those news broadcasts. But that came down to the fact that, you know, when that earthquake struck, there was only one American correspondent living in Haiti at the time, and only a handful of others from elsewhere in the world. So, you know, it was more than 24 hours before any foreign media was able to arrive on the scene.
What did they do right?
Well, you know, they did respond quickly. I mean, they didn't have, you know, that being the media, didn't have people on the ground when the earthquake struck. But as soon as word got out of the severe devastation, you saw all of the networks jump on it. I mean, CNN in particular sent an incredibly large team down to Port-au-Prince. I think it was over half a dozen people. And all the other television.
But the number, is a quantity equal quality, you know?
Well, in a situation like that, it does help to have a number of reporters on the ground, because there are a number of angles you have to cover, you know. First and foremost, there's getting information to local people about where they can get needed food and water and medical treatment. And then, of course, you've got to have a reporter who's covering the logistics of USAID and the U.S. military and other organizations that are there. So really, you need a lot of people on the ground, and I would compliment those news outlets that did send
particularly
more than
at a time
one
when
reporter.
they're facing some
Absolutely.
financial difficulties. So Ricot, what did you think? I mean, what was the Haitian community's reaction to the coverage? I'm sure you heard a lot. What were their take on what was going on? Did they feel that it was adequately covered?
Well, I think as a whole, yes. There's a little bit of what she said in terms of comments made about the coverage. But I can understand what he's saying too, because right now, Anderson Cooper has made himself a name in the Haitian community. I was with him not too long ago. He came to the station, but I was with him for about an hour and a half. I walked him to various neighborhoods of Brooklyn, like we went to some Haitian restaurant, and he went to the Pastor Nicolas Church. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating. Some people are saying, Anderson for president. I'm telling you.
The Constitution would not allow that, but anyway.
You know, I might point out one thing. There was one Haitian journalist, a guy by the name of Carl Pedra, who was really instrumental in getting a lot of... Pedra, yeah, he's a local television and radio personality down there. He did one of the first interviews with CBS News via Skype. He was really Twittering a lot. He was using these social media platforms to get really important. He let Haitians know, for example, that a local cell phone network called Digicel down there was up and running in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake. So I would just like to give him credit for his excellent work.
Do you think the social media was instrumental in informing people what was going on?
Absolutely, because what you couldn't find on the mainstream media or in the black press, whatever, you could certainly find from a direct link from somebody who was on the ground or in the area, you know, and so it was a direct line, and you could ask the question that you wanted to ask and get a direct response to your concerns. So it's been a beautiful medium. It will continue to be so. The mainstream media has to pay attention to what the people are asking, has to pay attention to the critiques too, because it's a genuine sort of concern that people have. And sometimes the analysis and the understanding, and if you have somebody who speaks the language, has an idea of the layout of the land, like you were saying before about the density of the population and knowing where people are in terms of the numbers of people who were lost. If you don't know the layout of the land, you don't really know what to ask. You don't know what questions to ask. You don't know who to ask. Do you know what I mean? And somebody made a comment the other day, the Haitian government might be weak right now, but it's the Haitian government. So you can't ignore them, you can't take them out of the equations because you have a different agenda or a different perspective.
What do you think about that? I mean, was the Haitian government belittled in the coverage?
Oh yes, they were, and there's a mushrooming of NGOs in Haiti, creating all kind of duplications. Nobody knows who is overseeing the NGOs. At least if the government is entrusted with some of the stuff, if things go wrong, you know where to go. Mm-hmm. But with these NGOs, they're all doing the same thing, duplication. So who oversees them? And that's the question. I understand that out of every every dollar of aid that goes to Haiti, 1 cent of it goes to the Haitian government.
Curtis, I have a question for you. Where do we go now? What is missing? What do you think the press should concentrate? What stories that need to be told that haven't been told?
Well, I think to some extent it's already begun. The media is starting to focus on flaws in the emergency response system, and I think that's exactly where they need to go right now. You know, as medical responders have been able to kind of treat some of the people, that kind of human elements moving a little bit out of the mainstream focus of the media, and now it's become, you know, very much about problems with that system. Is enough aid getting in? Is enough food and water getting in? There was, you know, that story last week about the suspension of the emergency medical flights that were taking people out of Port-au-Prince onto floating Navy hospital boats. And I got to give the media credit. They really jumped on that story, and as a result, the U.S. government reinstituted that program.
And also the governor of Florida rescinded his stint.
Exactly, and that's what the media needs to do, put pressure on these aid responders to keep working as efficiently as possible.
I think social media also helps with that kind of pressure too, because it's an immediate response and you can't ignore it, because ordinarily you'd have to wait for the 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news. Now it's like it's immediate.
Okay.
What are you doing? I'm watching you.
This is the positive side of instant pontification and instant news. Right. You know, I want to touch back on this Tarzan effect, if you will, that you wrote about. I mean, a lot of these reporters are middle to upper middle class Americans, most of them white. I mean, from what perspective should they report?
What should they report?
Perspective, not what. Because in some ways, you know, what do you want? What do you expect from them?
I mean, it's not that they shouldn't report. It's just that why is it only you that we're seeing on the news as the majority? Where you don't have any black reporters, you can't find anybody in the region, you can't find any of your black reporters in the station to go with you. You can't find a French speaker or a Creole speaker to be with you. It just seems like it's that whole, you know, the Tarzan effect, which we see so often in every medium. So that was what the criteria was for the article, was like, why are we not seeing, better yet, okay, that's what it is, but here's what we're doing, and that's where we focus on other people who are doing other things, regardless of how the mainstream respond, this is what we're doing.
Did the Amsterdam News send a reporter?
We were supposed to go with Reverend Sharpton a week after the earthquake happened, and that didn't happen. We were supposed to go a couple of days after that, it didn't happen, so we haven't been yet. But Herb Boyd is going tomorrow. He's flying down there tomorrow. He's going there until Friday. So we'll have one of our reporters there. So we're trying to stay on it. But, you know, sometimes right here is where you can do the most, because you can see the whole, you know, panorama, and you just, you know, you do what you have to do and what you can do.
We'll have to leave it at that for now. Nayaba Arinde, Ricot Dupuy, and Curtis Brainard, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now here's Abi Ishola with some other news-making headlines.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. Thousands of New York City residents in need of housing assistance have been left out in the cold. City Limits reports that the New York City Housing Authority can't afford to fund over 2,000 Section 8 vouchers because of budget problems. Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer says the Housing Authority knew about budget constraints since May and therefore shouldn't have given vouchers it couldn't pay for. A representative from the agency says they are working to find long and short-term solutions to fix the problem. From the Amsterdam News, several organizations are suing New York City's Department of Education, DOE, for giving the green light to close 19 schools across the city. The plaintiffs include the United Federation of Teachers and the NAACP. They say the DOE violated the law by not properly analyzing how thousands of students would be affected by the closings. Some of the most economically vulnerable areas in the city will be impacted if the schools are shut down. From Feet in Two Worlds, Democratic House Representative Luis Gutierrez is fed up with immigration reform being thrown on the back burner. The Illinois congressman is calling for Hispanics to punish Democrats and Republicans in the next election if the issue is not addressed. Gutierrez was angered by President Obama's State of the Union address, in which he says the president only addressed the issue in passing near the end. In related news, Jews and Latinos are bonding as immigration reform remains an issue for millions of Latinos. The Forward reports that for many Jews, immigration is symbolic to their cultural heritage and experience, though the issue doesn't largely affect them now. Jewish activists also see this alliance as a way to get Hispanic communities to assist with issues of concern to Jews, such as Israel. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to you, Vianora.
From the arms trade with Taiwan to a conflict over currency, there seems to be a growing list of grievances between the U.S. and China. To get a clearer picture of the state of Sino-American relations, I spoke earlier to Joe Wei, national editor of World Journal, a Chinese language daily. Joe, the Western mainstream media has been signaling a deterioration in relations between China and the U.S. Has the World Journal been providing the same kind of analysis of the relations between the two countries?
Yes, World Journals, our newspapers, has been covering this issue since this year. And regarding the three T's is Taiwan, Tibet, and trade. We also provide the analysis to each one of these topics regarding his implications and the position of each side, and the possible and potential result will be in terms of each party, China, United States, how do they deal with this kind of a situation, and what their position and why they want to do this.
So all three T's, as you call them,
yes,
they're in the news right now. Are we really seeing increased tensions? These are issues that the United States and China faced before, and we kind of expect the reactions from each when these issues occur. What are we witnessing right now?
From the China side, we think this is as far as the rhetoric things goes, we think this is pretty severe. We haven't seen this kind of strong rhetoric and the action from the China side in terms dealing with the arms sales to Taiwan from the United States. And right after the President Obama announced they're going to sell arms, new kind of arms to the Taiwan, and China immediately have 4 different kinds of measures taken out.
But this is not the first time the U.S. sells arms to Taiwan. You're saying new kind of arms? What exactly do you mean?
Well, this time they want to provide some kind of new helicopters, Black Hawks, 60 about Black Hawk helicopters to the Taiwans, basically for the humanitarian efforts or for the military transformation. All the weapons they sell to Taiwan, including the Patriot 3, the defense missile system, all these 3 kind of arm equipment sold to Taiwan is not really offensive one, it's just defensive. From the Taiwan's point of view, they need some kinds of military system in order to safeguard themselves in terms of, once they needed to back them up to negotiate with the Chinese in terms of trade issue, though. Yes.
You say that the Chinese had a stronger than usual reaction. What kind of reaction?
Well, for instance, immediately after the announcements, the China has put out 4 different kinds of measurement. Among them is the sanctions of the U.S. company, which have produced the kind of weapon to different kinds of countries, not only just Taiwan, like Raytheon company or the Boeing company, and the Marking Lauded Here company. All this company, they are producing a weapon. The China is prepared to do some sanction, although right now the China hasn't specifically announced what kind of steps they will take to sanction all this company, though.
Just briefly, I want to go back to Obama's visit in November to Beijing. How does that visit translate into this whole picture of increased tensions?
Well, on the surface, I think this is the first time the President Obama visit China. Everybody's really expected. There's have a high expectation about his visit to China. However, if you look into the detail, we can find the American side is not very happy about all the arrangement, all the protocol. For instance, the town hall meeting that the President Obama held in Shanghai, they invited all kind of the Chinese students into the meeting, have a dialogue with the President Obama. However, we find out they find out that all the student has been pre-selected, and they do have a question prepared, pointed question to ask Obama. So from American points of view, we don't really like that kind of setting. You know, you have been preset and everything, and this is the whole visit is very successful. However, during the meeting, we can tell that the American didn't get any kind of concession out of China. For instance, President Obama did bring out the currency issue to the Chinese side, and they want to point out the currency, the renminbi currency issue is kind of harm to both sides of trade.
Well, U.S. officials here are hopeful that China will make some concessions and allow the currency to appreciate against the U.S. dollar. What's been reported in the Chinese media on the issue? Yes,
we reported both sides of position on this. We also report that just last week that the China's think tanks predict the renminbi will appreciate this coming March. And the reason they do that is not because the pressure from the United States, is because their internal problem in terms of inflation, in terms of a bubble, over crediting, those kind of things as the internal Chinese problem, economical problem. They want to solve their own problem, so they wanted to appreciate the renminbi. On the other hand, the United States also put on the pressure on China. They wanted to appreciate renminbi as soon as possible or as much as possible. So we are telling our readers, probably everybody can expect the renminbi will be appreciated during the next 1 or 2 months, though. Yes.
Let's talk about how much pressure can the U.S. put on China, given, for one, the fact that China owns much of the U.S. debt.
We don't think the United States right now has too much choice. But well, on the other hand, China we also think there's no too much choice for the China, because both our country right now is very close than ever before. We have all kind of levels of economics and cultural interactions right now, and not to mention that the China owns so much U.S. foreign debt right now, and on the other hand, the China need the markets, United States markets, otherwise the export in China we cannot go nowhere, even though they have other country can go. However, the United States is still the largest export country to China, so they need these markets. So we don't think, even though right now the Taiwan issue or Tibet issue is a long-standing issue right now, and won't go away because trade issue solving though. So other than these two key issues, I think the trade issue, including the trade protectionism, foreign currency or exchange things, those kind of issue, we think there's a proper channel right now for China and United States to deal with. So we are cautious about all these developments right now, especially the year of 2010 this year. However, we think everything will be going well though.
And on that note, Joe Wei, thank you for your insight, as always, on the relations between China and the U.S.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back.
You promised me the world. Is this what you had in mind?
Help EarthShare and its members restore balance to the world. Visit earthshare.org and see what you can do. EarthShare, one environment, one simple way to care for it.
From registered nurse to marketing maven, that's a turn Michelle Drayton's life took 11 years ago when she decided to create Today's Child Communications, out of which came Today's Child magazine. We end the show with a profile of this niche publication for parents of color. Anjanette Levert has the story.
All right, this has got to definitely pop more. Let's change out the picture here.
Michelle Drayton is talking about the quarterly magazine she publishes, Today's Child.
And so this really sort of grew out of my passion to provide resources to families and really help them to improve their quality of life.
An idea born out of her personal experience, because she started her career helping families as a registered nurse, specializing in pediatrics and infant mortality.
One of the things that I really saw as a major problem, and also what was really lacking, was really resources for parenting, and in particular resources targeting families of color, and in particular African American families.
In 1998, confident of her expertise and professional resources, she bootstrapped the company by pre-selling the magazine. She calls Today's Child a blend of media and public health education.
It's a child health and parenting magazine that deals with everything from parenting issues, pregnancy issues, child health and development, so issues like autism and ADHD, and then also lifestyle and relationship issues. Hi, I'm Michelle Drayton, publisher of Today's Child magazine, and this is really an exciting day. So I wanted to welcome all of you to Inside Today's Child. We're sort of taking Today's Child magazine and going a little further with our interviews, and so you're not only able to sort of read and print, about a celebrity's sort of life and their relationships and their parenting issues and challenges, is that we're actually capturing that on our Inside Today's Child magazine TV web series.
Although celebrities attract consumer readers, Drayton views the magazine as a teaching resource for professionals dealing with children.
When I started this publication, people said, well, there's already parenting magazines. Why do you need to have a parenting magazine dedicated to families of color? And I said, well, why is there still so many gaps in education and health and all of these issues, and the issue of single parent-headed households and poverty and all. These are problems, these are challenges that are facing Black families and other families of color, and someone needs to be talking about it.
In recent years, Drayton says the magazine has been received more positively. She hopes that this acceptance will translate into increased advertising, and in turn those ads will help her reach her goal.
We want to be a household name. We want to be the ebony of parenting and child health. We want that legacy of every parent saying, yes, I have Today's Child, and it's still relevant, and it's still a great resource.
Anjanette Levert for Independent Sources.
That's our show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
In the meantime, be independent-minded.